This poem by Christina Rossetti is an elegy, which means it's a poem which explores the theme of death. It's also a sonnet, which means it's a 14-line poem written in iambic pentameter. So remember me when I am gone away. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Iambic pentameter, conversational tone, and it's divided into an octave, so the first 8 lines, and a sestet. You'll often find particularly Petrarchan sonnets divided into this structure. The rhyme scheme of the sonnet is A, B, B, A. So away, land, hand, stay. Day, plan, stand, pray. So it's A, B, B, A in the octave. And then in the sestet, it switches to C, D, D, E, C, E. So you have while, grieve, leave, had, smile, sad. So that's the structure. This creates a cyclical structure, which means that the poem almost kind of comes in cycles. You can see away, stay, day, pray, and then we have while, smile, had, sad. So all of these cycles that move in the poem, and this mirrors the cyclical nature of life and death. I think the Lion King, the circle of life. That's the idea that we get here. All of this lends a highly romanticised tone to a poem where the speaker directly addresses a lover and asks him, in this case, to remember her, that titular imperative. The poet Christina Rossetti thought about death obsessively. She experienced a nervous breakdown in the 1840s, and nervous breakdown in the 1840s, which was a development of a thyroid disorder that she had. She was often sick, and this caused her to think about death obsessively. And additionally, given that this poem was written in the 19th century, it's unsurprising that the poet was thinking about death because it was a much more pervasive experience. People did not live as long, there was not as good healthcare as we have today, and therefore in the 19th century, death was a common concern. Now, we already mentioned the opening imperative of the poem, and significantly the title of the poem is also the first word, remember. That imperative is repeated throughout the poem on multiple occasions, this command that her lover remember her. It's clearly a concern for the speaker of the poem, and it rings through the entirety of the poem almost like a tolling bell at a funeral service. She opens her poem with the soft metaphor for death. A soft metaphor is also called a euphemism. So she uses the euphemism for death, when I am gone away. It means to say something in a gentler way. And this softens the impact of her subject matter, which is that she will die and she doesn't want to be forgotten. So she uses that euphemism to soften that message. That is reinforced through the following euphemism, silent land, which is, of course, another softer way of saying, I suppose, the land of the dead. That's what she's talking about. And she makes their separation clear by using tactile imagery. When you can no more hold me by the hand, that tactile imagery is very intimate. If you hold someone by the hand, you're probably very close to them or in love with them. That tactile imagery confers the speaker and the addressee of the poem, it conveys their intimacy. At the beginning of the next section of the poem, she of course repeats her imperative, remember me when no more, day by day. And she repeats that phrase, day by day, to slow the pace of the poem and to depict the protracted nature of grief, how time seems to move slowly when you are missing someone or when you feel upset about something that has happened. She says that day by day you would tell me of our future that you planned. Only remember me, you understand? And there I've missed one of our repeated remembers. There are the repeated second person pronouns. You tell me of the future that you planned. You understand. Repeated second person pronouns show that this is a poem written for someone else, written for a loved one. And her tone of intimacy, tone of affection, as she tries to comfort him. Given that this poem was written in the 19th century, it's unsurprising that she uses religious imagery through the word pray. It will be late to counsel then or pray. This reflects Rossetti's devotion and commitment to the Church of England, which is a very important context for this poem, Rossetti's belief and commitment to God. As we look at the sestet of the poem, the final 6 lines, Rossetti introduces a tonal shift or a volta. A volta just means a turn through her conjunction yet. This introduces a volta or a turn, a tonal shift, as she begins to consider the prospect that her lover may forget her. And she uses enjambement, where the sentence runs over 2 lines here. If you should forget me for a while and afterwards remember, that enjambment reflects the length of time for which her lover may forget to remember her, the length of time that she is forgotten. And she recognises that this may be for an extended period. And she introduces a new imperative under those circumstances: do not grieve. Do not feel sad if you forget me for a while. And here she shows real empathy, real understanding for her lover, and she goes on to explain the reasons why. She introduces a much more sinister and harrowing comparison for death compared to her opening euphemisms. She compares death to the darkness and corruption. This is a much more sinister metaphor compared to her opening. I suppose reflecting that Rossetti realises that death is, I suppose, man's final enemy, and something that all of mankind has in common, something that most people are terrified of. And she appreciates that her lover may not want to remember her forever because that is too painful. It's important that people attain closure, and Rossetti shows empathy for that. She concludes her poem with this shift in her thought, a change in the command. Through better by far you should forget and smile than that you should remember and be sad. And I suppose she contradicts herself in a sense, but recognises that he needs to forget her in order to move on and to be happy in his life. It is significant that in the final stanza, she completely omits the first person pronoun, showing that she is now gone, she is dead, and that she is content for her lover to forget her, to move on, to find closure, peace, and acceptance in his life. So this sonnet has a very kind and conciliatory tone, where Rossetti prioritises her loved one, wishes the best for him, and recognises that sometimes forgetting is preferable to remembering.